welcome to today's episode of your darling program Youth Can on Independent Television ITV. I am your host, Joy Igoche. Youth Can is that very wonderful program created by ITV to reach out to youth with creative and entrepreneurship ideas that are geared towards the development of the society. And today we are going to be discussing a very salient issue which has to do with preventing domestic violence. Domestic violence or domestic abuse or family violence is not a term that is alien to us. It is mostly perpetrated in families, amongst family members, amongst partners, spouses. It could be from parents to children and all of that. But these things as situations we see around are things that we hear of every day. We hear stories of abusive partners. We hear story of husband beating the wife. Even nowadays we see the one that is the other way around. So we see that both male and females are actually victims of this particular type of violence. But the big question remains: how long will cases of domestic violence be silenced in our society? How long do we keep mute about this kind of menace? And it keeps continuing, and we see cases upon cases. We see a lot of things going viral. Just recently, we had the case of a security man who abused, is a pedophile, he abused a 13-year-old boy, which led to the boy's death. So how long do we keep quiet about all of this? Well, we're going on a short break now, and when we return, we'll have a special guest with me in the studio to do justice to this topic. Stay tuned, don't go nowhere.
Mother of the sexually abused boy, Jeffrey Ugiagbe, weeping uncontrollably following the death of the 13-year-old junior secondary school student who could not survive the effects of the anal sex despite spending weeks at the University of Benin Teaching Hospital. Parents of the deceased, who described their son as a very intelligent boy with a promising future, said they are not only pained at his death, but they are indebted to several persons, including Commercial Bank, where they borrowed money for the medical bills. They said government to ensure that the law takes its full course.
Ovio Otobo, I want him to be sentenced to death, not life imprisonment. Presently now, I have been indebted to, I cannot eat 1 square meter now because of the increment. I borrowed here and there for the second admission. I have not paid anything. The money I'm owing is close to 3 million.
My senior son, where is he? Borrow money from all his friends. Take the save Jeffrey. Doctor say we dey fit do one, make dey under manage. We try our best.
Na my grandpikin, Jeffrey, they pay me for body. If a young material do for me now, man, I help. Na help I want. They borrow money, debt for their neck, not be small one.
The deceased, Jeffrey Ugiagbe, has been deposited at the mortuary where it was guarded that men of the Edo State Police Command have carried out a search of the accused house. During the parade at the State Police Command, the accused, Mr. Ovio Otobo, said he had had anal sex with 9 underage male children.
I slept with 9 boys. The boy, they my area now. One other one with me don't sleep with. Now that one come introduce him, come. So now let me come start with him. Now only once now I will sleep with himself.
This was where Mr. Ovie Otobo was staying when he allegedly sexually abused 9 children in this area, with one of them, Jeffrey Ugiagbe, now dead. We've been told that Mr. Ovie has now been remanded in Correctional Center. Before now, the Police Public Relations Officer of Edo State Command, SP Kontongs Bello, confirmed that 6 of those children had written statements.
You're welcome back again, and of course, when the screen looks this good, you know what time it is. It's Youth Can. And like I promised that I'll be having a special guest with me in the studio to do justice to this topic of discourse today. I have with me Mr. Mohammed Mayfather. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Yeah, yes. You're welcome. We are happy having you around on board to talk about this very important issue today on preventing domestic violence. Preventing domestic violence. So quickly, how would you describe domestic violence?
Well, this, I think in our societies we have history, we have culture and tradition. And one of those things that has been a point of, discuss, especially with the outcome or outbreak of COVID-19, was the issue of domestic and gender-based violence. During that time, when people are forced to stay at home, we registered a lot of cases of gender and domestic violence. In fact, the cases have risen, and that is when all stakeholders knew that we need to come and work on, put our hands on deck. There are serious issues, there are serious social problems in our society, and these issues, top on the list, are gender-based violence and domestic violence. And it may interest you to know, when we said domestic violence or gender-based violence, these are violence that occurred, in most cases, between spouses, between family members, and between family, nuclear and extended family. These issues happen within our societies, and it's high time that people break that culture of silence and come out to speak on these issues, because we have people who are killed based on this domestic violence, who died silently because people don't know what they are going through, especially our youths, the teenagers, who if you have young couples in our societies, these issues of gender-based violence do occur, and they don't even understand what is gender-based violence. They don't understand what is domestic violence. So it's important for people to understand and create that boundaries, that from stage A to B, this is what is acceptable as couples or as spouses or as family members, and from stage 1 to 2, this is what we call violence, and this is what you need to do at this stage. This is, you should raise alarm or you should report to appropriate authorities. So it is important that issues like this are issues being discussed on national issues, on national discourse, to bring out these issues. First, and I want to say there are 4 angles to this. First, we need to break that culture of silence, which is promoted by our socio-cultural beliefs, and then we need to report these cases to the appropriate authorities. After reporting, we must make sure that perpetrators are brought to justice, and justice is served to those who were violated. Then, and most importantly, fourthly, is getting the survivors support. Not only support, when we say support, we need, how do we rehabilitate them? They need mental rehabilitation, they need financial support, they all need our love and concern to make them believe that all is not lost, and they can go back and start their life afresh, and also assimilate in the society at large. So it is important to look at all those 4 angles concurrently. Every stakeholder has his own roles to play in this. We need, like the CSO, the civil societies have been advocating, have been sensitizing people to come out and speak on these issues, on domestic violence, on gender-based violence, on all sorts of violence that are occurring in our societies, especially during the lockdowns and afterwards. But it's also important for duty bearers to know that they have their own obligation to make sure that justice is served to those who might be
the perpetrators,
perpetrators of this, and also to get justice for victims. And that is the only way and how you can encourage people to come out and speak up and report cases.
Okay, so thank you very much for that window. Before we even go deeper into people coming out to speak up and all of that, so I would want to know, do you think there is any factor, or there are factors that actually trap people in this kind of abusive relationship, and they are there and they don't want to even leave, despite the should I say, a song going around saying domestic violence, there's gender-based violence, and all of it. You see people, the repercussions of all of this violence being inflicted on people. So what are those factors that allow people, that thing that is restraining them in that abusive relationship?
First has to do with our own social cultural beliefs. There are our cultures. There are religious scriptures who says a woman is submissive to her husband. There are cultures that once couples come together, the only thing they tell them is you have to be patient. Marriage is all about patience. Being together is all about patience. But they don't create boundaries. They don't create that boundaries. And another aspect of it is that those who are in that, there is what we call, economic independence.
Okay.
Most of them do not have this economic independence. They are economic dependent. They are forced to be dependent on those perpetrators. And when you have, if you have that dependency on that perpetrator, you find it very difficult to get out of that. You need support, and that is when we said we need support, professional support from institutions who come and guide you, who give you this mental guide, and who also give you this social guide on how to take care of yourself and how to get out of this. It is one thing to report; it's another thing to get a survivor out of that condition, mentally and physically and also emotionally, to get her to start her life. It's not only women; it's all men are also victims and survivors of this domestic violence. But it's important to have this kind of discussion. It's important for people to understand counseling. It's also very important to solving these issues. If you are not counseling, you don't. It's a guide. There is nothing wrong for someone to go to a marriage counseling school. There is nothing wrong for someone to go and see a mental psychiatric doctor for mental counseling.
Okay, so talking about this counseling thing and going to see a psychotherapist, why do you think people actually even shy away from going to see a psychotherapist or a counselor before engaging in any form of union, relationship, or to help out? Why do, especially Nigerians, especially in this our climate that we are, where the social context, people just believe that before you go see a counselor, you should have a problem, in your marriage, or before you go to see a psychotherapist, there must be something wrong with you mentally.
Yeah, it comes from our social cultural beliefs and stigma attached to that.
Okay.
But thank God now the world has become a global village, as we said. With the advent of all social networking groups, people now see what is happening in the entire world, in the entire globe. So people see that yes, there are professionals who are there to help you and guide you on what to do. You don't need to fall sick before you seek for help or medical. You need to regularly go and do a checkup. Before, people don't believe in checkups. They just go to hospitals when they fall sick. But now people are advised that for you to remain healthy, you need to be having a regular checkup to know what you should do, what is your balance diet, what do you do, what kind of protein you should be eating, and what this will keep you fit. So it's also apply to couples, to social contact with people. Once you are, for example, people who are coming, young people who are getting married, they are advisable for people to go for a marriage counseling. It's not to tell you, it's just to tell you the do's and don'ts of marriage. People know that for you to come together, of course there are no perfect marriages, but you can have a good marriages.
Well, there's this belief that there are no perfect marriages. So why do I go and wash my dirty linens outside? Some people just believe that even the counselor you are going to meet also have problems in his home. So what do you think will be the end result if you say, okay, there are no perfect marriages and this couple is being advised to go for counseling? So what will they achieve in the long run, knowing fully well that there's nobody who is perfect and there's no union that's perfect? So at what point do they get to, what is that thing that they will achieve? What is the result or the resultant effect of going to meet these counselors?
One thing, attributes. Every person has his own attributes of life. He knows your weaknesses and you know your strength. But in most cases, you see that people who don't follow this routine or don't go to these counselors do not even know what is their strength and what is their weaknesses. You just be in a relationship with somebody, you don't know who you are, or what he is. But a counselor, a professional, would tell you, once he look at you, he tell you certain kind of questions, and you answer, he tell you, see, Mr. A, this is what you are, this is what the kind of person you are, and your partner, this is the kind of person you are. So when he said A, for you to keep this marriage alive, you should say B. You should always have a place of compromise where you can dialogue and discuss issues. There are things that you can manage, and there are things that, and people, this professional will tell you that when this man steps this boundary, you should raise the red alarm. There are times that you can raise a yellow flag, there are times that you can raise the green, and there are times that you can, just like the traffic light, you can also raise a red alert. So it's for the profession to tell you this is how to manage yourself. You know, when you are in these emotions, you control your emotions. When you are this is what you should do. When you are in this stage, this is what you should do. And when these things escalate to this is time to say bye-bye to this kind of relationship.
Wow.
So for these people, especially for young couples, it's important to understand these virtues of companionship, of gathering.
There are sometimes I feel violence is something that, for example, now people that don't have this orientation of counseling, or they don't even understand each other, the chances are that they may be holding grudges, against each other, and it builds up to that point where it becomes violent. And we hear cases of domestic violence here and there. So I'm talking about why people stay trapped in an abusive relationship despite knowing that this thing is not right. And you talked about this economic independence. It reminds me of a story I want to quickly share with you all. I was talking to a woman last week, and she was telling me how she spent 13 years in her life in an abusive relationship. This lady, she got married very, very early. She was pushed into marriage. She actually celebrated her 16th birthday in her husband's house. So she was, sold up. And even then she was like, I want to go to school. I'm not done with secondary school. The parents are like, no, don't worry, you can just go. Your husband has money now, so he will train you, he will take you to school and all of that. So that was the ploy that they used to get her into the early marriage, and she was with the husband. At first, like, the husband is rich, yes, they had quite a lot of things, but she said the man doesn't even give her money, like physical cash. He rather takes her out, then she points whatever she wants to get and take it back to the house. That it was like that. But after the first few years of the marriage, like the first year, second year, at the third year, the man wasn't saying anything about her going to school. And her life was just like she was in the military, regime where everything is just so upbeat. It wasn't looking as if she was in a marriage. And she was telling this man that, okay, what about school? And then they started having problems in the house.
That's where issues would start.
That's where issues started from. Then she talked about how the man, whenever he's angry from outside, he transfers the aggression to the woman in the house. Violence started. They started beating her up and everything. But she kept on, keeping it in. And she said the man even restricted her people from visiting her. So her siblings can't come on board. Nobody can come to the house and everything. So it became too much for this woman. And this woman was in this abusive relationship for up to 13 years, until one day she decided she can't continue, and she ran away from the house. Along the line, they were able to dissolve the marriage, and the story continues that way. So, like, I don't know, why is it that women tend to be I feel they are more in this receiving end of domestic violence.
You see, for one of the consequences of early marriage, you just say that it's not just about the physical appearance of a woman. You have to make sure that that girl that you are giving out of marriage, she's mentally matured to go into that union, to go to that relationship of union of marriage. Just being young, she's not that critical enough. That critical faculty of reasoning has not developed yet for her to know what is right, what is wrong, and for her to also make decision on herself, on her life. So when you give out a young girl into an early marriage, that's one of the consequences you get. That's kind of and I'm happy that she survived that at the end of over 10 years.
13 years.
13 years. But that is the consequences of early marriage. Her brain, her mentality is not mature enough to be into that union.
Okay, now let's assume this is no longer an early marriage thing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about people now
who have stayed that
yes,
long in that abusive marriage.
Are there any indications to look out in a partner that you know that, okay, this person will be more aggressive or like, you know, a violent freak and all?
There are things that you cannot just see in face, but there are issues you can understand easily. When you, at the beginning, they don't become abusive. As you said, you're just narrating how it started. At the beginning of the marriage, you see that things are going equal, but there are things that change the mindset of someone. Not everybody is born naturally violent, but there are some emotions that a personality that can change at a given time. Things change in life, but for someone to understand what is marriage, that's when he can accommodate those changes. That is when he knows how to manage this kind of relationship. But if you are not properly managed and understand the institution and what do you see? If this man now, if she knows that a man goes out when he comes back franking, if something went wrong, if he didn't get his contract, if he didn't get his salary, he end up beating her. She should know how to respond to that kind of a man. Okay,
as a summary, what can the youth do to help mitigate, this issue of preventing domestic violence? Because we're talking about youth can here.
Yeah.
What can they do, and what is your general advice on a final note to the youths out there?
First, we are in the 21st century. We must go with the global world. Any person that is going for this, any serious relationship, I advise they should go for a counseling, marriage counseling, relationship counseling. You must do that to understand who you are going to stay and live your life with. Your life partner, you must be able to understand him properly, what his do's and don'ts, knows who you are and who you are going to work with, who you are going to stay with. Not even in marriage, even in a workplace, you need to understand, manage the people around you who you work with. And it is also important to break out that culture of silence for youth. Speak up. You don't keep quiet when things are going wrong. There are always time to raise that red, green and yellow alerts. So you need to communicate and don't allow anybody to disconnect you from your family and your friends. That is one of the stages they start. Any abusive marriage or relationship, the first thing they do, perpetrators, you cut you off from your loved ones, from your family, and those who they know that you have confidence and you can share your story with. Once they cut you up, you have nobody to report to. You'll be on your own. So don't allow anyone in any relationship to cut you up from your family, your friends, and your associates. These are people you can share your story with. These are people that you can report first on what is going on. And don't hesitate to always report to the institutions, duty bearers. The police are there. Always report, document something, that this is what this person is doing to me. Even if it is not going to be prosecuted, but at least have that documented evidence that one time or the other you have reported such a case to somebody.
All right, thank you very, very much, Mr. Mohammed, for your contribution today on this program. It has really been insightful.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much for being on board. Now we're going on a short break now. When we return, we'll be wrapping up this program. Please stay with us. Yeah, welcome back again. And all right, a lot has been done about this topic. We've had a thrilling time with our guest today, who talked about, preventing this domestic violence, and he also encouraged counseling a lot. I think that is something we should consider doing, because we're living in this 21st century where we no longer go blindly into things. We have to learn how to speak out, because silence is no longer helpful for anything anymore. So this is where we'll be drawing the curtain close on today's episode of our darling program, Youth Can on Independent Television ITV. I am your host, Joy Igoche. Have a nice day.